One Open Vortex. I'm Ani. I've been missing for several weeks. I want to say hi and welcome back to my viewers and my subscribers for patiently waiting for my next video. I was dealing with some health issues and landed me in the hospital for a couple days, but nothing serious. All is well now, and I'm back. So today we'll be covering questions that most people have regarding the channeling experience and what that's like. Everything from what to expect, what it feels like, what you're going to be seeing or perceiving in one way, shape, or form, how it all begins, and how it ends up evolving and growing. For example, the method that I use for my students to learn to tap into the other side quickly is a meditative countdown method that takes them into an alpha state. Now, in this alpha state, the third eye, which is, as I discussed before, dormant and not in much use for a very long time with the human consciousness, begins to become activated. Once we get to this meditative state of mind, usually one of the first things that we see is color. And that color is indicative of your specific energy. Not necessarily the colors contained in your aura, although it could very well be part of your aura. This is on an energetic level. What you're perceiving at that point, that color is your energy on the other side. The aura, although it's invisible to the naked eye for the most part at this point in our evolutionary process, is still manifesting in the physical realm. So that original, say, frequency or color that you're a part of, because that's what that color indicates, is your lineage. Your lineage manifested through the color spectrum. Now, in order for me to talk about this, I have to talk about the light spectrum, which again ties into our limited perception. All these things you'll find through time, all these topics are interconnected and really are manifestations of the same patterns, the same repeating patterns or cycles that are found throughout our physical universe. Now, our usual range of vision falls within a small portion of the electromagnetic spectrum. And I'll be posting up a picture now of the electromagnetic spectrum. As you can see, the different, and these are just a few examples. For example, you have your X-rays that, as you can see, is a wave that vibrates at a specific speed. You have gamma rays, you have X-rays, and then you have the light spectrum, which runs from red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, purple, and repeats again as red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, purple. These are little patterns that keep repeating. Now, how that spectrum, for example, manifests in the physical body is through our chakras. And anyone who's ever studied or read up on the chakras knows that the indigo, we have 7 chakras. The indigo is your crown chakra, vibrates at a much faster frequency than, say, your base chakra or the red chakra. For those of you not familiar with the chakras, there's plenty of information and videos out there on this, and I just don't want to get too much off topic. But in any event, that color that you initially see when you start doing this channeling process is what you're seeing is your own energy, and the vibratory frequency manifested in color form, what we perceive as color, because color is white light slowed down produces the color spectrum. So each particular color vibrates in a wave at a different speed. Again, red vibrates at a slower frequency, orange is a little faster, yellow is even a little faster, green is faster. By the time it gets to indigo, it's vibrating, oscillating at a very fast frequency. So that gives you a clue as to your vibratory frequency, what color you initially see. Another thing that or things that come up during the initial channeling process, in terms of once you start getting these images, is you get things both from your unconscious, as far as symbols or random objects. At the beginning, it's almost an exercise in your own unconscious, sending you almost like tests. This is only a test to see if you're receiving what I'm sending you type of messages. So initially, after you tend to see colors more often than not. Most people will see colors initially, or a color, or a combination of colors, which again corresponds with your particular energy and consciousness and vibratory frequency. Now, the next thing that tends to come up are just random images from anything. I've heard everything from a golf ball, to a pyramid, to a tree, to a snowflake, to a whale, to a lizard, to an alien, to, I mean, anything can start, in a sense, presenting itself. And really, what channeling is getting into a state of awareness where you almost unfocus. Part of what keeps us in our limited, narrow perspective is the fact that we are focused. When you're accessing information, or you're accessing any type of energetic from the other side, there's a certain unfocusing that needs to take place, and that's what the meditation countdown accomplishes, because it takes you to a point where you can get a blank screen, like I like to call it. It's almost like the blackness of space, what you see as you close your eyes and gently roll your eyes to, without forcing it, it's a gentle process, to rest your vision right between your eyebrows, or right above the section where your third eye resides. And what also helps the process is to do this in complete darkness. Now, people are generally afraid to do this in the dark, because once the images start coming up, our conditioned response and our conditioned fear of all things the dark kicks in. However, I have to tell you, it's what really helps you see using the third eye chakra, or your pineal gland, which is also kicks in with visions, and what allows you to interpret and receive these visions. Having the lights off initially, since it's a sense of sensory deprivation where you are not having the distraction of an outside light source, even with your eyes closed, you still see light kind of coming through your lids. And at the beginning, anything is a distraction from sound. Just like those of you who meditate know that this is the case in meditation, especially when you begin meditating. You get itchy, you want to sneeze, the dog is barking, the neighbor's mower is bothering you. The slightest of interference is going to throw you off your game. So one way of bypassing the external noises of our lives is to do this at night for that purpose, and more importantly for the purpose of being able to turn off the lights, and you can have you can have a night light on if you're really that scared of the dark. But what happens is that this enables you to really get that effect of that blank screen. That is how the images, and they're subtle. I mean, we've been conditioned by the what I like to call the Hollywood School of the Occult to believe that any kind of apparition or contact from the other side is going to entail either a grotesque demon from the dark side, or a glowing, blindingly, blaringly bright, cocoon-like entity. I have to tell you, when I've experienced, I'm kind of sidetracking, but just to give you an idea, I've experienced both the visuals, and also the the images coming directly to you through your mind's eye. But I've also experienced the manifestations in front of me, and seeing, because I do see beyond the physical realm on a regular basis. And I gotta tell you, it's a combination of both. So doing this in the dark initially definitely helps. With time, it gets to the point that you won't have to do a meditative countdown. You won't have to sit in the dark. It just becomes a part of you, and it's that remergence. It's that higher self that's more in communication with you directly, without the filter of doubt and fear that obstructs us from really being able to do any of this. Now, the problem that we face with our fears of the unknown, of the other side, of all things that we consider supernatural, which, quite frankly, the other side, guys, the other side is anything that falls outside the range of our 10% consciousness and perception. There's a lot on the other side. And really, there's nothing to fear. A lot of our fear has to do with, really, all of it has to do with how ingrained that's been in us, and how we have been conditioned to fear the dark. For as long as we remember, you've heard, "Are you afraid of the dark?" So everyone is. And the reason for that, few things in the world are just random and by chance. There's a big reason why we have been steered from accessing higher consciousness and accessing and becoming more aware. And that, in a nutshell, has to do ultimately with control. When you know what you have to do, you don't need anyone telling you what to do. Number one. Number two, I don't want to get too much into governmental, what some might call conspiracy. All I'm going to say about that is, whenever we look back on history, there has always been corruption, lies, manipulation of truth, assassinations, all the corrupt disgustingness that is not only our government, but the world governments. And this is all, it all plays a role in keeping us small, and keeping us blind, and keeping us disconnected. And the truth is, the truth is stranger than fiction. And you'll see how in time that holds truth. So initially, you'll be getting images that may or may not make any sense to you. Some of these things, like I said, are just a test from your unconscious, seeing check 1, 2, check, to see how it's working. Images for your unconscious, or at the same time, you may very well start accessing what's around you. And by what's around you, I mean the consciousnesses that you attract, that are part of your celestial lineage, that are part of your ancestry, that are part of your consciousness. Ultimately, we are all one, as I've discussed before, and we've heard by so many other people talk about, but these different aspects that we are of this one, on the other side, are multifaceted as well. So the other part of you, the unconscious part of you, isn't exactly one-dimensional either. So that other part of you breaks up as it comes into density, as it comes into the physical realm, as it reaches in to communicate with you, in as much as you expand and open up to communicate with it. So this higher consciousness, although we can see what approaches us as our spirit guides, our angels, our ancestors, are really just different aspects of yourself. Different aspects of that unconscious, of that higher self, manifesting in different dimensions simultaneously as you. And another thing you can access and can very easily present itself to you is yourself in other lifetimes. You can see yourself, I've seen myself in all kinds of scenarios as male, female, wind, tree. We have been everything. Not everyone has been here eternally, or as much as some of us have, but I've been here for a very long time on the planet. And a lot of us have as well. Those of us that are really looking to evolve and complete, and those of you who know what I'm talking about know exactly what I'm talking about. Sense that you know, there's a part of us that's already moved on, but before the rest of us can catch up with it, we each need to do our thing and come and do what we came here to do. But anyway, as I am tending to digress, I've been on a lot of medication, so I am in sidetrack mode evidently. But let me reel it back in. So another thing that happens is once you go into the state where you are calm, meditative, you're completely conscious, you're completely aware, there's no loss of consciousness here at any point, there's no loss of control here at any point, there's nothing to control, because you are merely being the observer. It's pretty much like sitting down and watching a television screen. The screen up here. The blank screen that I take you to. And that blank screen will begin to undulate with images. First color, then symbols, random images. The key is to not judge it. The minute, the instant, it happens in no time. The instant that you think, oh, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. What is that about? That's it. You pop out and it blocks you. The key is to watch all these images come in and out. And this is how it happens initially. It gets to the point that none of this is even an issue. You're just picking up and somebody's talking to you and you're there. You know, you're there at any point. You think of a question and you get the answer. Sometimes you don't get the answer, and sometimes it's a matter of timing. Sometimes you have to wait and you'll get the answer at a later point. But generally speaking, you get a lot of resolution instantly. And this happens through time, and this happens through practice. But at the very beginning, what gets you to that point where you don't have to go through all these steps is my little simple meditative countdown method that has been working for me since I'm 14 years old. This is how I was taught to meditate when I was 14. And I took that system, and when all the channeling started happening to me, which was a big breakthrough that happened for me, and I'll get into that, I can tell you all about that experience, which was really mind-blowing. when the big breakthrough happened for me, I found a way to merge that meditative system in a way where I can access these energies who had appeared and presented themselves to me, and who initially had come through a friend because I was afraid to do it. But I don't want to get too into that because that's really a crazy story, and it's how it happened for me, and at some point I'll be talking about that. But there's a lot to cover here, so let me reel myself back in. So as I was saying, it's really important to not judge initially what you're seeing. Just let it come, let the images come, and they will undulate into your awareness, right here into your third eye, and they'll come in and they'll go back out. That happens with the color, that happens with any images, symbols, whatever you receive, observe it. Be aware of the impression that it initially gave you, if any feelings, anything, and let it go. And you patiently wait for the next image. For some people, they come in back to back. There's no waiting time. For other people, it takes a few seconds. For other people, it takes a minute or two before the next image appears. Now, one thing that's very key for this, for any kind of work that you do with the metaphysical, is you need to set the intent. One thing that's very important is to set the intent. There are all kinds of energies in creation, and for better or worse, the dimension that is closest to our third dimensional realm, which is the astral plane, the fourth dimension, houses all kinds of energies. Not necessarily evil. Good and evil, again, is a human relative perception, but it nonetheless is a reality in our third dimensional realm, so we need to take that into account. Before you begin any process like this, it's very important to set the intent and to be very clear as to what you attune yourself to. I only work with beings of light. I'm all too aware that we live in a dual universe. But there are dark energies out there, and it's not something necessarily you want to tamper with because, number one, we still don't understand the light completely. The dark is something we're terrified of and really shouldn't even go there until, even if you have a wider understanding. One thing I can tell you, I've been exposed to both. When the channeling process started for me, the initial energies or consciousness that came through, I channeled myself and two other people who were involved, two other friends at the time who were involved with me at the beginning stages. Like I said, when I was afraid to fully channel, I didn't have a problem with them appearing to me. I didn't have a problem with them talking to me, but this concept of channeling, where, you know, images of Linda Blair and possessions and poltergeist, you know, take over, and I was just like, there's no way. I mean, you can show up, you can tell me whatever you want to tell me, but what is this channeling you coming through me? This is completely unnecessary. However, one of my friends, who was a brave soul, was very open to the whole process, and initially I had a big apparition in my backyard, and although I had seen things throughout my life, as a child, which I wasn't afraid of until the age of about 6, where I saw my first horror movie and some dolls that were possessed, and it was over. That was it. The party, the connectedness to the other side came to a screeching halt, which is what happens to all of us, really. So for many years I was terrified of all this stuff, but it intrigued me, and it led me to metaphysical studies and studying with time the occult, different schools of occult studies, from Franz Bardone to Blavatsky. So anyway, at the beginning I experienced fear, and once my brave friend decided to give it a whirl, and it worked, and for the first 3 days he was streaming, and I was skeptical, and I thought, are we delusional? Is this really happening? But the information that was coming through from the very beginning was just extraordinary, and So I started typing everything. I was a legal secretary for many years, so I take transcription pretty quickly. I type about 85, 90 words a minute, and even then I still couldn't keep up. So I started recording the sessions that my friend was channeling at the beginning, and then I braved up, and I realized there's really nothing to fear here. This is it helped me understand that what we've been conditioned to believe isn't remotely what it is. And it doesn't feel what I thought it was going to feel like. Nothing took over. Nothing possessed me. However, I do really suggest and recommend that when you venture into the realm of the metaphysical, you set your intent. And because I only work with beings of light, I recommend that that's what you do as well. You set the intent, and by that I mean you can speak it out loud, you can think it, you can put it out as a thought form. But basically, what you, in a nutshell, in your own way and in your own words, what you put out is, you only want to tune yourself to the highest, clearest, purest frequencies that have something to offer you, that are in connection with your celestial lineage or your ancestors, your spirit guides, only those that you feel comfortable with. Okay? Everything in creation has free will, and everything, any other life form has to respect that free will and the boundaries and the parameters that you set up. Your word is law when it comes to your physical world, when it comes to your body, your mind, your consciousness. Nobody, nothing has control over that. People, when you hear of exorcisms or possessions, these are people that in one way, shape, or form open themselves up to lower consciousnesses, or also it's a disorder where, for example, with schizophrenia, where different parts of themselves come through from other times and spaces, where they don't have memory of the different personalities. But this is not what I'm talking about here. This is you always being in your calibers, no loopiness. As far out as this stuff sounds, and as perhaps simplistic or oversimplified as I am saying, this this capability that we have in order to do this, it really is that simple. So these are the energies that you really want to attune yourself to. And once you set your intent, it's respected. And not to say down the road you won't see some sort of reptilian creature. I know that's not very comforting. But if and when that happens, you will be more than prepared to deal with that experience. So you want to attune yourself to these higher frequencies. There's all kinds of energies, all kinds of consciousness. Everything in creation leaves a trace of itself behind. So, what we would identify or recognize as evil certainly exists in the astral plane and in our everyday world. So it's not something you need to attune yourself to, because first of all, even if it has a pull for you, and I know some people have this fascination with the dark side, and I gotta tell you that the dark side has nothing to offer, because the dark side, the what I've learned in my interaction with it is that it really has nothing to offer, because fear is an illusion. All manifestations that are echoes of that illusion don't really have anything beneficial to offer, other than the understanding that it's an illusion. So as you attune yourself to higher frequencies and you set the intent as to what you want to connect with, this could be your spirit guides. These could be your ancestors, your departed loved ones that may have messages for you. Another thing, these symbols and images that we get, a lot of times initially won't make any sense. I always recommend writing everything down, keeping a notebook or a voice recorder, but the notebook is always good because when you write things down, it kind of helps you see it from an objective perspective. And I recommend keeping a detailed notebook with the date and the experience, what you saw in the order that you saw things to the best of your ability, because that's the other thing. When you're tapping into stuff and streaming, you can also try automatic writing and write down as you're going along, but whatever offers you the least distraction. It's whatever is comfortable for you, whatever keeps you in that zone. Now, it's a good idea to write down anything that you experience. What you see, I recommend writing down the date and anything that you see, whatever color you see, whatever images you see. And you know, a lot of times, and it happened to me at the beginning, what you initially see doesn't make any sense. They're just random images that come in and out, You might see a face that you've never seen before, and you're like, who the hell is that? And why am I seeing this face? And all of these things, with time, in hindsight, being so wonderful, you will be able to piece these things together. And a lot of these things won't make any sense and never will. And like I said, are just random images that come up from your unconscious, a test from your higher self to see how well that third eye is working. Images from your unconscious. But once you'll learn how to differentiate, and it gets to the point that you learn how to distinguish when it's something that is genuinely outside of yourself. So, for example, recently, one of my newer students sat down, didn't know what to expect, which is a great start. Having no expectations. Don't have expectations. Expectations puts a lot of pressure. Expectations veers our focus into expecting something that rarely turns out to be how we expect it to be. So what I recommend is when it's time, when you're ready to start seeing more, and you sit and you meditate and you take yourself down to this alpha state, or I take you down to this alpha state. So for example, recently one of my newer students, who I was taking down through the countdown, and he started seeing immediately. The first thing he saw was purple, then he started seeing the different images, and it shocked him because he said it freaked him out because he was, even though you're just the observer, because you're sitting there, and I recommend a comfortable chair. I know that sounds almost, a given, but you'd be surprised. Your head gets very heavy. I recommend something with a high back. A sofa is really nice. Try not to do this lying down, because I don't recommend doing this lying down because the tendency is to fall asleep, and that kind of defeats the whole purpose, because you're in that in-between state. You're in between awake and asleep, where you're still conscious, kind of like when you have those sleep paralysis moments. Without the sleep paralysis, that's always very uncomfortable, where you're kind of that in-between, in and out of your body. But this is different. This is your awareness, and you're in between awake and asleep, but you're fully conscious. And it's in that space, where the imagery starts coming up. Now, my student kind of freaked out because out of nowhere, he started seeing faces that he's never seen before. And this is very common. Sometimes it's imagery that we're picking up on, energies that are passing through around us. So yeah, it definitely helps to keep record of what you're receiving. One other thing is it becomes very addictive once you see how easy it is to pick up on all the things that come through to you. you want more, and you want to see more, and you want to understand more. And this is actually a good thing, because this is precisely what helps you develop. Now, how much you will actually see depends on each individual. Everyone is different. Some will see immediately, like I said. Sometimes with others, there's a wider, longer interval between the imagery. And now this is the initial part. Now, like with everything in life, practice makes perfect. The more you practice, the better you will get at it, needless to say, and the more free-flowing everything will become. Once you get the imagery going, which again should happen on the first attempt, you can immediately start asking questions. You can ask for one of your spirit guides, for example, one of your spirit guides to step forward and identify itself, to give you a name. You will get a name. Now, I have to say, a lot of entities really don't have names. They give us a name as a way for us to, first of all, identify them, and secondly, names usually from the spirit world usually carry the resonance of what that energy is about, or what archetype it emanates from, or what it has come to symbolize through time. You can also tap into entities or energies, consciousness, that have existed historically, or religiously, or biblically even. So everything is there. Everything is out there. Now, different things happen. There's so many factors here and so many variables, and I'm trying to keep everything in some sort of cohesive order, but as it comes, I'm just going to put it out. So, for example, sometimes, let's say one day you're just dying a channel, and you're ready, and you're just like, okay, I'm going to sit down tonight, and I'm going to sit there, and I'm going to start communicating with my spirit guides. That's what I was saying. Once the imagery starts coming in, and you see that it's happening, and you're seeing in a way you haven't seen before, it's subtle, and the images appear, and one thing I want to also clarify is that the imagery comes through as light and shadow. So to recap, what you need and what the channeling experience is like. Number one, you need a readiness, a willingness, and an openness to the possibility that this actually exists and works. As simplistic as it sounds, it's the first step. You need to expect the unexpected, in terms of it's nothing like what we've been told it's like, and nothing like what we've been shown or led to believe that it's like. It's nothing like we expect it to be, and it's a lot simpler than we ever imagined it could be. So with that openness, that understanding, and that's really all you need to know, and initially, just to get started. And with that understanding, that openness happens. It's really just as simple as that. And once you get the hang of it, and once you experience it for the first time, and you see really how seamless and how simple, I mean, this is something, let me put it this way, your higher self, that other part of you, is just beneath the surface. It's just beneath the surface. It's just a matter of finding that click where everything kind of aligns, and you start seeing a lot more than you've ever seen before. And the other thing to remember is to not judge. Don't come with any, which is difficult to not come with any preconceived expectations, but try to check your expectations at the door whenever you try try to check your expectations, because it will not be anything like you expect it to feel like. It just feels natural. I mentioned this in my last video. You feel like more of you, and the reason that you feel more of you is because that higher self of yours, that other side of you, is merging with your limited 10% consciousness. And that's why you feel like more of you, because you are tapping into more of you. And there's nothing to fear with that. Fear is something that's going to take a while for our human consciousness to release, because again, it's been so embedded in us. It's been so embedded in us through religion, through the media, through our own ignorance. And that it's completely kept us away from such an enormous part of our reality that we have been oblivious to for thousands upon thousands upon thousands of years. As human beings, it's our natural compulsion, really, to better ourselves and reach greater understanding of our world, our environment, and the universe that we inhabit. And this is certainly one way of putting all that into focus. It's through the unfocusing that the greater answers come, that in turn allow our reality to really come into focus, in terms of us having a greater understanding of ourselves within the context of the world and universe that we live in. You know, this conditioned fear that we have of all things other side will organically fall away. You know, like I say, you know, what we don't understand, we fear. And the minute you begin having a better understanding of how all of this works, how it's really our innate birthright to be able to utilize our senses, even the ones we're not aware of, which is what this brings. It allows you it allows you further usage of your own dormant abilities and uncultivated possibilities. Because ultimately what we're tapping into when we tap into the other side, through these energetics, through these consciousness, through these beings, which we perceive as beings because we perceive from our human perspective. So everything we perceive, even that on the other side, is still based through our understanding and is still from within the framework of our 10% consciousness. But nonetheless, that is precisely what will not only expand our consciousness, but in the process allow us to reach an understanding, a greater understanding that will allow us to release the fear. So it's kind of a catch-22 in that. So, you know, the catch-22 is that the fear is what keeps us from accessing greater understanding. And it's inevitable that as you experience this new way of perceiving, this new way of understanding our reality, is precisely what allows the fear to fall away, because you realize that we've had it completely wrong. And not surprisingly, I mean, when you think about we only perceive 10% of what's there, how much do we really know? So in order to break ourselves out of that parameter, the most effective way of doing it is through reaching out into the what if, into the unknown, into the uncultivated possibilities. that reside both within and without you. And I have to say that the unanimous response from, I would say, nearly 100% of the people that I've taught how to do this throughout the years is that they can't believe how easy it is. They cannot believe that that has been there the whole time. And that it really is that easy. So I know we are also conditioned to not trust what comes easily to us, because we are also made to believe that life is supposed to be a struggle. And no doubt at times it is. But sometimes, you know, when things come easily, it's a gift, and it's not something to scoff at. It's a gift from the universe. Accept it, use it wisely, and move on. The key is to not get stuck with anything. And the same applies to channeling, and that's why I say, you know, as the images come up, as you start receiving these messages, acknowledge it, make note, recognize what you're feeling, what feelings it brings up for you, what impressions it brings up for you, and let it go. And so as you continue practicing and channeling and accessing your energies, your guides and your frequencies, once you become familiar with these energies and comfortable with them, you really do develop a relationship with them. Now, we all have a crew, a posse of guides that come and go. Some come and go. A couple, usually one or two, tend to work closest with us. Those are the energies, those are the ones that you work the closest with, are the ones that continue appearing over and over again. Or another way of identifying one of the ones you work closest with, or one that you work really close with, is the feeling that you get when you first meet, in this lifetime anyway, when the first time you meet or introduced to any one particular entity. Usually that'll give you some sort of resonance. I remember the energy that I work the closest with. For my work, I've channeled a total of, initially the first few years, a total of 33 different entities. However, the one that I work the closest with has remained with me through the years, and turns out that, and I had flashbacks of this several years ago, but one of the things I asked was, when I was little, I remember always talking to someone, but I had no memory of seeing, you know, the invisible friend. Like I didn't have any memory of a physical manifestation. And many years ago, during one of the channeling sessions, I asked, did I ever see you? You know, I don't remember seeing you. And a flashback hit me, like, it was just from instantly. I hadn't finished asking the question, and I had the flashback, and it was from a time when I was inside the crib, and I would see this being who would talk to me, and he would, I would see him just like a bust, you know, from here up. And he was hilarious, and he was incredibly intelligent, and he would make me laugh, and I remember laughing, and I had that flashback. Now, I was in the crib only up until the age of 2, and it felt pretty spacious in there, so I must have been an infant at that point, and I was completely blown away. I had this flashback when I was about 32, so this was, you know, several years ago, but it blew my mind because it took me back to, you know, the one that to this day turns out is the energy that I stream the most and just pops in and out. And you've heard him in my couple videos when my voice gets a little deep and my personality changes a little bit. And usually if you know me, and this is just my normal way of speaking, but when I'm streaming, my voice tends to drop a little bit. I sound a little feline. I sound kind of like a male cat in a way. And he just kind of pops in and out, and I work very closely with him, and he's really given me all the energies that I've channeled throughout the years, and many come and go. So with that said, for all of us, there's some that just come and go. They might come and visit one day and tell you something, give you a tidbit of information or not, or just say hello and dip. But there's always depending on what your role is also. If you have a big job to do on the planet, you're going to have a big posse. If you're more localized, then, you may not have as big of a crew. But we've all got our energies, our lineage, our star ancestors, our celestial ancestors with us. They're just different fragmented parts of ourselves. Like I said, existing in different times and spaces that are finally overlapping, connecting, and remerging into one. And that is ultimately the real purpose of all of this. I mean, yes, while we're here, it's going to afford us a meaningful life, because once you start having certain understanding, and a greater understanding of the world that you live in, helps you move through it a lot better, helps you become so much more than you could ever dream of for yourself, and accomplish so much more than you ever could dream of for yourself. But ultimately, it's to get us to align and become our true full potential again. So I hope this shed a little more light for you and brought a little more clarity into what channeling is like and what it's about. If you're interested in scheduling a private guided channeling session with me, I will walk you through the whole process. My sessions are conducted via Skype. Unless you are in the South Florida, Miami area, we can do it in person. And it works the same way. I'll be there with you every step, and this is something that I can help you with, even if it's just once or twice. If you remember, once we do the process, if you keep in mind how it works, you can continue this on your own. It does help to have a guide there, especially at the beginning, because it gives you a sense of safety. It's something you can definitely do on your own, but it does give us a sense of security, knowing that someone who knows what they're doing is there guiding you along the way. And I certainly know what I'm doing. I've been doing this for a long time. I've accessed some really mind-blowing information that I haven't brought up here, because that is something I worked on 7 years for a series of 3 books. The first of which I'll be releasing, if all goes according to plan, by next year. Aiming for the end of the year, October, November. So fingers crossed. That's my stuff, the stuff I tapped into. This that I'm sharing with you and offering you now is so you actually, like I said, can expand your awareness, tap into more, and hopefully also access what you're calling, what you're here to do, so you can get to getting and do what you need to do to evolve and maybe not have to come back here so much more. So to schedule a session with me, contact me at OneOpenVortex. It's the number, OneOpenVortex@gmail.com. I also would love it if you would subscribe, share, comment. I'd love to hear from you. Questions. I love questions. I love answering questions. Send me some questions. So till next time, take care, keep evolving, and I'll see you soon.